was just like, oh, this is insane! Hey guys, it's Kristen, and today we are talking about the first season of Netflix's new show, I Am Not Okay With This. Based off of the graphic novel by Charles Forsman, this story follows a teenager navigating the complexities of high school, family, her sexuality, while also dealing with the fact that she is developing superpowers. Consider subscribing if you like my videos, and drop down in the comments and let me know your thoughts on the show. And I want to know, if you could have any superpower in the world, what would you want? I think if I had to choose, I'd probably do teleportation, because that would be so amazing to just like pop up wherever you want and not have to worry about, you know, taking the time to get there. I think it would just open up so much more free time, to be honest. So this series is led by Sophia Lillis, who you might recognize from the new It movies, and she plays a young girl who feels like she's not very special. She doesn't have a lot going on in her life. She's very much kind of like on her own, and as the season goes on, we see her dive into a new friendship. She's trying to figure out her sexuality and deal with the death of her father, and, you know, just kind of go through high school. It's sort of like this coming of age story, very reminiscent of like a John Hughes high school story, but there is a twist. She is developing superpowers. And I think the way that they paced this show out, it's 7 episodes, you know, 20 to 30 minutes each, was really actually very successful. I think that they didn't rush anything, they kind of took their time with it. It was very believable in the way that they sort of like introduced these powers, and she's like, is this really happening? And I love that even though she's developing these powers, we are still very heavily focused in that kind of like high school vein, and we get to see a lot of really fun references to other films of the past, like The Breakfast Club. There's references to Carrie, 16 Candles. I think they did a really great job of making this feel like a new story, but also infusing some of those classic elements and references. I actually really enjoy the cast that we're following. I think the character of Sydney is, you know, very angsty, but she also is trying to get closure. I think she kind of has like a realistic relationship with her family, you know, sometimes they argue, sometimes they get along. I think she particularly had a really great relationship with her brother, which was really nice to see. And I also enjoyed the way that they kind of narrated the show through the diary, because I think it really lets you get inside Sydney's head even more. I love the friends that we're introduced to. Stan sort of becomes a little bit like her sidekick, and even though he really likes her and she has feelings for someone else, I think that they have a really strong connection and friendship over things that are kind of like goofy and weird, but also feel fun and relatable. And I think with the character of Dina, it's interesting to see how she connects with Sydney, because they're so different. Dina's very bubbly and people really like her, and she could be very popular if she wanted to be, but she also is very loyal to her friendship with Sydney. I will say though, at times, if anything, Dina was the character that felt like she might not 100% fit in, because I think that they really actually built the relationship between Sydney and Stan to be just like much bigger and stronger than the relationship between Sydney and Dina. So while I could like see why Sydney liked her and, you know, her bubbly personality and whatnot, I don't think that they really gave us as deep of a connection between the two of them. The other thing I would say is I don't think that we really fully understand what Sydney's powers even are. Like, is it telekinesis? Is it some kind of like, I don't know, she's just exploding things and pushing things away? And we see all of that comes out when she's stressed or angry or embarrassed or something like that, but I'm hoping that if we get a second season, we'll get to dive further into like what exactly are her abilities, what can she do, and will she be able to control it. The music that soundtracks this show also really brings you into that kind of vibe, and I think they actually did a really great job of having songs in there that really reflect what is going on in each scene. Overall, they had a very clear aesthetic with this show. It did have that 80s vibe with like the visuals and the coloring and the music and the references. It has that nostalgia in a way, even though it's set in modern day. Charles Forsman, who wrote the graphic novel that this show is inspired by, also wrote The End of the Effing World, and that creative team for Netflix also worked on this show, so I thought that you could kind of really see that similar connection in the aesthetic and the vibe of the projects. And I think what's really cool about the show is that, you know, there's so many superhero shows out there, but this definitely felt different. It felt really grounded in that kind of high school aspect of like, you know, who do they have a crush on, going to homecoming, losing their virginity, all of these moments that people go through, while also adding in that deeper element of like trying to come to terms with their father's death, also finding out that you've inherited these powers. And I think that they balanced all of those moments very well. It feels like an origin story to something bigger bigger. When it comes down to it, I really had a lot of fun with this show. I think that there's some darker moments, there's some lighter moments, there's some funny stuff, there's some crazy stuff that goes on. There's definitely some twists and turns they add in, especially towards the end. From the pacing, to the aesthetic, to the story, and our lead characters, I think that they did a really great job. Now I want to get into the ending explained and some theories that I have going into a potential season 2, so there will be spoilers ahead. You have been warned. The climax of this season all happens at homecoming, which is sort of where it had been leading to from the very beginning, and a lot of interesting things go on at this dance. You know, one, we find out that Sid's best friend Dina might actually reciprocate the same feelings for her, which is really exciting. But then things kind of take a turn when Brad comes out ready for revenge. And speaking of that, there are, I feel like, a lot of hints throughout the season that tease things to come. Sid's nemesis, Brad, is up to something. He's planning to get back at Sydney for messing up his relationship with Dina.
Let's just say that tonight's gonna be mind-blowing.
And that definitely foreshadowed what was to come, which was that Brad had Sid's diary and he was reading off all of this stuff about her, outing her to the entire school, revealing secrets about her, and almost revealing to everyone about her powers. But before he can do it, there's this explosion and Brad's head pops. And I was just like, oh, this is insane! We kind of get that Carrie moment of Sid running out of the building with blood all over her. And there's something about it, obviously, that's terrifying, and the whole school's running out. But there's also something about that that's just, like, kind of funny. Like, just to see someone's head pop, like, it felt a little bit like a parody in a way. I was just not expecting the show to go there in that way, so that was for me a moment that was really exciting and was kind of like, wow, where will this show go next? I gotta say though, I was pretty surprised that no like administration came up to Brad and like cut the mic or something, because, you know, what he was doing was pretty inappropriate, and I don't think you could get away with that at the school. So, as you know, as much as like, you know, Sydney didn't mean to blow up his head, I also like totally get why she did, because he was such a jerk. And there was like a previous episode where Stan had told Sydney all these things about, you know, what it means to be a superhero and how there's gonna be someone that always like shows up and is sort of their mentor.
So each of these comics features an unknown visitor, a professor, a wise old sage, some form of a mentor figure, you know, who visits the hero, explains their abilities, the mythology behind them, how they can harness those powers for good.
And so the shadow person comes up at the very end of this season and comes to Sydney, and it looks like if we get another season, this person would be sort of that mentor figure for Sydney and help her, you know, embrace and understand her abilities. And the fact also that Stan brought up, you know, a couple of different options of how Sydney could have gotten her powers, I felt like that was a little bit of a foreshadowing of maybe what we'll learn in a future season. You know, he mentions, oh, maybe this is hereditary, and she didn't think it was, but later on in the season she learns that, you know, her father had the same thing. And he also mentions, oh, what about a military science experiment? And we know that the father was in the military, and who knows if maybe that is kind of where his abilities originally came from. Maybe they experimented on him and it kind of led to him having this ability in him that was passed on to his daughter. He was in the Marines. During that time there was a big accident, a big explosion that went on that everyone died except for him, and you know, everyone assumes that there was, you know, he was just lucky, but really, because we know that he had the same abilities that Sid has, you know, it was really his fault that that happened, and he was very much struggling to deal with it. And I think we might continue to see this journey of Sid letting people in on her big secret like she did with Stan, because she's seen that her father didn't have anyone to lean on and was on his own, and that's why, you know, he ended up supposedly taking his life. Speaking of, you know, moments that they kind of teased, they've said multiple times that he didn't leave a note. There was no suicide note, and so maybe we're gonna find out that there was something else going on there. Maybe he was attacked, maybe someone was trying to get rid of him, and I wonder if we might end up learning that Sid's dad didn't actually kill himself, and maybe this whole suicide is just a cover-up. In terms of some theories for season 2, or things that I'm interested to see, like where is this gonna go next, we do see in the middle of all the chaos of homecoming that Sid's diary that Brad was reading from kind of gets lost in the shuffle. We see Stan kind of sees it, but will he be able to grab it? Will someone else grab it? That makes me wonder, if someone else does, could her secret be revealed, or will that person keep her secret? Will Dina end up finding out her secret? And just in general, what is Dina thinking now, because she had just revealed to Sydney that like she might, you know, be interested in, you know, forming a more romantic connection, and then all of this happened, Brad's head explodes in front of everyone. That's kind of enough to leave you a little bit shook. How are they going to explain this head explosion in the next season to everyone around them? Like, will everyone realize that Sydney is to blame, or is it some kind of other weird, crazy fluke that they're gonna throw in there of like trying to explain how this happened to the people who don't know Sydney's secret? And I'm also curious to see how they're going to dive into the father's story. I just really don't think that he killed himself. I feel like they're kind of hinting at that throughout the season, that maybe there's something else that went on there, maybe something to do with this shadow person that he felt was following him that now Sydney has met.
What about Sid's brother? We know that she has powers, so did her dad. Could he have them as well? We know that he's a big superhero fan, and we even see him drawing his own superhero costume at one point. So could they maybe dive into that in a potential season 2 as well? If you guys like this one, you can check out more right over here, and I'll catch you in my next video. See ya!